So hello friends, welcome to the Anatomy Hub. After studying the sulci and gyri, today we will study about the functional areas in the cerebrum. So the functional areas of cerebrum, they are most important in neuroanatomy to know the functions of how the cerebrum that is controlling whole over our body and how this cerebrum is the seat of consciousness that today we will study. So the among the functional area, the first functional area, or you can say the primary motor area. So the primary motor area or area number 4 of the Brodmann, that is actually located in the precentral gyrus on the superolateral surface and extends to the anterior part of the paracentral lobule on the medial surface of the cerebral hemisphere, and it contains large number of pyramidal cells including the large pyramidal cells of Betz. About 40% pyramidal or the corticospinal and corticonuclear fibers arise from this area. So the electrical stimulation of primary motor area that produces contraction of the muscles of mainly opposite half of the body, and that is it controls the voluntary motor activities of the opposite half of the body. Although the cortical area that control of musculature of body is mainly contralateral, there is significant bilateral control of the muscles of the upper part of the face, tongue, genioglossus, mandible, larynx, pharynx, and axial musculature. So the specific regions within the area are responsible for the movement in the specific parts of the body. Only that movements are represented in this area and not in the muscles. So the human body that is represented in an upside down manner in the precentral gyrus, that is known as your inverted homunculus, is shown in this picture. The pharyngeal region and the tongue, they are represented in the lowermost part of the precentral gyrus, followed by the face, hand, trunk, and the thigh. The legs and feet and the perineum, they are represented on the medial surface of the hemisphere in the paracentral lobule. Further, there is disproportionate registration of the individual parts. The area of cortex controlling a particular movement is proportional to the skill involved in the performing that movement and not to the bulk of muscle participating in the movement. So the face, especially the lips, tongue, larynx, and the hand, they have the disproportionately larger areas, while the trunk and lower limb have the smaller areas that you can observe here. So the lesion of primary motor area in one hemisphere that produce the flaccid paralysis of the extremities of the opposite half of the body, or you can say that condition is your hemiplegia. The masticatory, laryngeal, pharyngeal, upper facial and extraocular muscles are spared from being represented bilaterally. Then we will see the premotor area. So the premotor area or area of Brodmann number 6, area number 6, that is actually located anterior to the primary motor area in the posterior part of your superior, middle and inferior frontal gyri, and extends onto the medial surface of the hemisphere. So the premotor area that is wider above, as you can see here, than the below, and it lacks the giant pyramidal cells of base that you will find absent over here. So it is the main site for the cortical origin of extrapyramidal, you can say, the corticobulbar, cortico-olivary, corticonigral fibers. So this premotor area it is responsible for the successful performance of the voluntary motor activities. So if you will see the fact, the primary motor area that receives numerous inputs from the sensory cortex, the thalamus and the basal ganglia, it stores the programs of the motor activity that assembled as the result of post experience, or you can say the past experience with the present experience. So the premotor area thus appears to be responsible for programming the intended movement of the primary motor area and controlling the movement in progress. So the clinical correlation, if you will see, if you will find a lesion of the premotor, or you can say the secondary motor area, that produce difficulty in performance of the skilled movement. So here in this figure you can see the main sensory motor area that are actually projected in diagrammatically form upon the superolateral surface that you can observe here in your in this picture, and a medial surface of the cerebral hemisphere that you can see in this picture. So you have to note that the primary or the first somatomotor area that includes both primary motor area and the premotor area. Okay, so the primary motor area, or you can say that marked in here as a MS1 that you can observe here, and the supplementary motor area that is located on the medial frontal gyrus on the medial surface of your cerebral cortex that you can observe over here, and the primary somatosensory area it is located in post central gyrus that marked in SML over here, and second somatosensory area that is located in the upper lip of the posterior ramus of your lateral sulcus. So the supplementary area that is located in the medial frontal gyrus on the medial surface of the hemisphere that is anterior to the paracentral lobule that you can observe here. So this body is represented from the before backwards in craniocaudal order. The stimulation of the supplementary motor area that produces the complex movements, some are described as assumption of the posture with bilateral effects including the turning the head, assuming position of trunk and the lower limb. So if you will find a lesion of the supplementary motor area that produce the bilateral flex hypotonia with no paresis or the paralysis. So like that you will find the frontal eye field, that is area number 8 that you can observe over here. So this is the area number 8 of the Brodmann. So this frontal eye field that is located in the posterior part of the middle frontal gyrus, just anterior to the facial area of the precentral gyrus, and the electrical stimulation of this region causes deviation of both the eyes, especially to the opposite side. So you will find the conjugate movement of the eye. So you have to remember here the frontal eye field that controls voluntarily the scanning movement of the eye, and that is dependent of the visual stimulation. The frontal eye field is connected to the visual area of the occipital cortex by the association fibers. The involuntary following of movement objects by the eyes that involves the visual area of the occipital cortex. So if you will find a lesions of the frontal eye field of one hemisphere, that will cause the two eyes to deviate to the side of the lesion and an inability to turn the eyes to the opposite side. The involuntary tracking movement of the eye when following moving objects is unaffected since the lesion doesn't involve the visual cortex of the occipital lobe. Like that, you'll find the motor speech area of Broca, that is located in the pars triangularis. That is your area number 45 that you can observe over here, and the pars opercularis, that is area number 44 of inferior frontal gyrus of frontal lobe of the left hemisphere, that is actually the dominant hemisphere in most of the individuals, and the persons are right handed. However, in 30% cases it is present in the right hemisphere and persons are left handed. So Broca's area, it is responsible for the production of expressive speech vocalization, and it brings about the formation of words by its connection with the adjacent primary motor area, and which in turn appropriately stimulate the muscles of the larynx, mouth, tongue, soft palate, and the respiratory muscles. So the lesions of this motor speech area of Broca, that will result in loss of the ability to produce the speech. That is your mainly the expressive aphasia, also called as the motor aphasia. So the patients, however, retain the ability to think about the words they wish to say. They can write the words and they can understand their meaning when they see or hear them. So although the language is understood, it cannot be expressed in speech even though there is no paralysis of muscles of lips, tongue, and vocal cords, etc. The prefrontal area or the prefrontal cortex that you can observe over here, uh, that the part of the frontal lobe that is rostral to the motor and premotor area, that is referred as the prefrontal area, that you can observe over here, and this area is connected with the individual's personality. It exerts the influence in determining the initiative and judgment of an individual, and it is also concerned with the depth of emotions, social, moral, and ethical awareness, concentrations, orientations, and foresightedness. It is an area of the cerebral cortex that is capable of associating experience that are necessary for the production of your abstract ideas. If you'll find a lesion over here, or you can say the bilateral destruction of the prefrontal areas due to the trauma or the tumors, results in profound change in responsibility. So there is loss of concentration, initiative, and judgments, and the individual no longer conforms to the accepted mode of social behavior and becomes careless about his dress and appearance. That is inappropriate social behavior. Example: use of the obscene language, urinating in public. So all these behaviors that is the damage of this prefrontal area. Like that, here you will find the primary sensory area. So this primary sensory area that is located in the post central gyrus and extends into the posterior part of the paracentral lobule on the medial surface of the hemisphere also. The opposite half of the body, it is represented upside down exactly in same fashion as the primary motor area. Similarly, the area of cortex assigned for a particular part that is not proportional to the size of the part but to its functional significance. The thumb, fingers, lips, and tongue, they have the disproportionately large representation. The primary sensory area, it is concerned with the uh, perception of your exteroceptive, or you can say the pain, touch and temperature, and proprioceptive, that is your vibration, muscle and joint sense. These all type of sensations from the opposite half of the body. However, the sensation from the pharynx, larynx and perineum go to both sides. The primary sensory area that receives the projection fibers from the ventral posterolateral and ventral posteromedial nuclei of the thalamus. The primary sensory area receives projection fibers from the ventral posterolateral or VPL and the ventral posteromedial nuclei of the thalamus. So, if you will find a lesion of the primary sensory area that lead to the loss of appreciation of exteroceptive and proprioceptive sensations from the opposite half of the body. The crude touch, temperature and the touch sensation often return, but this is believed to be due to the function of the thalamus. The secondary sensory area, so this secondary sensory area that is located in the upper lip of your the posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus. The face area that lies most anterior and the leg area is posterior. The whole body is represented bilaterally and this area is related more to the pain perception, and the evaluation of this area may relieve the intractable pain. The sensory association area that occupies the superior parietal lobule corresponding to the area of 7 also, areas of 5 and 7 of the Brodmann, and it is concerned with the perception of shape, size, roughness and the texture of the objects, and it enables the individual to recognize the object's place in his or her hand without seeing. So such ability is referred to as a stereognosis. So lesions that you will find over here in this area that will result in ability to recognize or identify an object by its feel. So this condition is called the tactile agnosia or the astereognosia. So the sensory speech area that is located in the left dominant hemisphere occupying the posterior part of the superior temporal gyrus of the temporal lobe and angular gyrus, that is the area number 39, and the supramarginal area number 40 of the gyri of the inferior parietal lobule. So the Wernicke's area that is concerned with the interpretation of language through the visual and auditory input. It is also an essential zone for constant availability of the learned word patterns. The sensory and motor speech areas exist together in one hemisphere only. The Wernicke's area that is concerned to the Broca's area by a bundle of nerve fibers called the arcuate fasciculus. The sensory and motor speech areas exist together in one hemisphere only, and the Wernicke's area that is connected to the Broca's area by a bundle of nerve fibers that is called the arcuate fasciculus. So the lesion of Wernicke's area in the dominant hemisphere that produce the loss of ability to understand the spoken and written speech. So this condition is called the receptive sensory aphasia. Since the Broca's area is unaffected, the expressive speech is unimpaired and the individual can produce a fluent speech. However, he is unaware of the meaning of the words he uses. Consequently, he uses incorrect words or even non-existent words. So the person is unaware of his mistakes. To the others, his speech sounds like an incomprehensible foreign language. The angular and supramarginal gyri are essential for the process of learning, such as reading, writing, and computing. So the lesions of these areas produce wide variety of aphagic disorders like disabilities in reading, known as the alexia, writing, agraphia, computing, acalculia, and recognition of names of the object, that is anomia. So lesions involving both Broca's and Wernicke's speech areas result in loss of the production of speech as well as loss of understanding of the spoken and written speech. So this condition is called as the global aphasia. The motor and sensory aphasias, that is actually very much important, and that's why I have given in a table over here, and you can observe this table. Recently, it has been found that both motor and sensory areas, they are not exclusively motor or sensory, but sensory motor in nature. The motor areas are predominantly motor, while the sensory areas are predominantly sensory. And according to the relative significance of their functional attributes, the primary somatomotor area, that is abbreviated here as a MS1, and supplementary motor area is abbreviated MS2 over here, and the first somatosensory area as you can see here is SM1, and the second somatosensory area is small, that is abbreviated as SM2 over here. Then you can see the functional areas in the temporal lobe. So this here you'll find the primary auditory area, that is the Brodmann's areas 41 and 42 that you can observe here. So this primary auditory area, it is located in the inferior wall of the lateral sulcus, that you can observe over here. And to be very specific, on the superior surface of the superior temporal gyrus, that occupying the anterior transverse temporal gyrus and extends slightly to the adjacent part of the superior temporal gyrus. So the primary auditory area that receives inputs from the medial geniculate body through the auditory radiations, and the medial geniculate body that receives input from the organ of Corti in the cochlea of inner ear of the both the sides, but mainly from the opposite side. And this area, it is concerned with the reception of isolated impressions of the loudness, quality, and pitch of the sound. In addition, it also picks up the source of the sound. So if you will find a unilateral lesion of the primary auditory area, that results in slight loss of hearing because it receives auditory inputs from the cochlea of both sides, but loss will be greater in the opposite ear. And bilateral lesions of the primary auditory area, that causes the complete cortical deafness. Then you will find the area number 22 over here. So this is the secondary auditory area, or the auditory association area, or you can say the Brodmann's area 22 over here. So this secondary auditory area, it is situated on the lateral surface of the superior temporal gyrus, slightly posterior to the primary auditory area, which it surrounds over there, and it receives the auditory impulses from the primary auditory area and correlates them with the past auditory experiences with the present auditory experience. Thus the area is necessary for the interpretation of the sound that the person has heard. So the lesions of the secondary auditory area, that results in an inability to interpret the meaning of the sound heard, and the patient may experience word deafness, that is the auditory verbal agnosia. Then come to here the occipital lobe. So here the functional areas in the occipital lobe, you will find the Brodmann's area 17 over here, that is the principal visual cortex area, and this primary visual or you can say the principal visual area, it is situated in the wall and floor of the posterior part of the calcarine sulcus, you can say the post calcarine sulcus, and may extend around the occipital pole on the superolateral surface of the hemisphere. The most marked structural feature of this visual cortex is the presence of the white stria, or you can say the visual stria of the genari. So the name, the striate area, the visual cortex is relatively thin and contains huge amount of the granule cells. The visual cortex that receives afferent fibers from the lateral geniculate body via the geniculocalcarine tract of the optic radiations that already we have discussed in our optic pathways. Please go to this I button and find the optic pathway to know more about the geniculocalcarine tract. The visual cortex receives the fibers from the temporal half of the ipsilateral retina and the nasal half of the contralateral retina. The right half of the field of vision, that is represented in the visual cortex of the left cerebral hemisphere, and the vice versa. It is also important to note that the impulses from the superior retinal quadrant, that is you can say the inferior field of vision, that pass to the superior wall of the calcarine sulcus, while the inferior retinal quadrants, you can say the superior field of vision, that pass to the inferior wall of the calcarine sulcus. The macular area, which is the central area of the retina and responsible for the maximum visual acuity, the keenest vision, that is extensive cortical representation, that occupying approximately posterior 1/3 of the visual cortex. The primary visual area, that is concerned with the reception and perception of the isolated visual impressions like the color, size, form, motion, illumination and transparency, that already we have discussed in our optic tract and the pathways. The lesions of the primary visual area result in the loss of vision in the opposite visual field, that is you can say the crossed homonymous hemianopia, and the unilateral lesions of superior wall of post-calcarine sulcus result in inferior quadrantic hemianopia, whereas lesions involving inferior wall of the post-calcarine sulcus results in superior quadrantic hemianopia. The most common causes of these lesions are vascular accident, tumors and injuries from the gunshot wounds. You have to note here a common finding with most of the lesions of occipital cortex, it is loss of the peripheral vision with normal macular vision, that is called as the macular sparing, and this is because the macular representation in the occipital cortex is separate and that is far greater than the peripheral part of the retina. The peripheral part of the retina, that is represented anteriorly and macula posteriorly in the occipital cortex, mainly in the occipital pole. So the occipital lesions must extend for a considerable distance to destroy the macular as well as the peripheral vision. The lesions of the visual cortex usually occur due to the thrombosis of posterior cerebral artery, or you can say the calcarine branch. The visual cortex representing the macula is spared because this is the site where the areas of distribution of posterior and middle cerebral arteries, they meet to each other. So this area may receive the blood supply from the middle cerebral artery even if the posterior cerebral artery is blocked. So patients shifting of the eyes very slightly while the visual fields are being tested by an ophthalmologist. So this all these things we have discussed in our optic tract. You may go to this I button and you can see the optic tract and its pathways and the lesions of the optic path also. So after this you just come down to here, the area number 18 and 19, that is the secondary visual area or the visual association area, or you can say the Brodmann's area 18 and 19. So this secondary visual area surrounds the primary visual area and occupies most of the remaining visual cortex on the medial and superolateral surface of the cerebral hemisphere. So this area receives afferent fibers from the primary visual area and it relates the visual information received from the primary visual area to the past visual experiences to by enabling the individual to recognize the appreciate what he is seeing. In other words, the secondary visual area is responsible for the recognition of the objects that is seen. So if you find a lesion in the secondary visual area, that will result in a loss of ability to recognize the object, that you can say the visual agnosia that's seen in the opposite field of the vision. So like that you will find other functional areas in the cerebral cortex, that is you can see here is the area number 43 over here. So this is actually test area, or you can say the gustatory area. It is located in the inferior part of the parietal lobe, posterior to the general sensory area for the mouth, or in the lower end of the post central gyrus in the superior wall of the lateral sulcus, or in the adjoining area of the insula, that is the Brodmann's area 43. So the vestibular area, that is probably located near the part of this post central gyrus which is concerned with the sensation of the face. The olfactory area, or you can say the Brodmann's area 28, that is located in the anterior part of the parahippocampal gyrus and the uncus region. So friends, here we have almost completed the functional areas of the cerebral hemisphere. So hope you got some ideas along with the clinical anatomy of the cerebral hemisphere, along with mainly concentric to the functional areas of the cerebrum. So thanks for watching.